Alright, so here is all the electrical stuff that I use. There's a little micro switch here. I got two of those in that bag. The LEDs, a pack of those, and then these are the battery holders. I ordered all this stuff online in these bulk packages, all very cheaply. I got the biggest LEDs that I could that would fit in the hole that comes pre-drilled in the barrel, and this is what I ended up with when it's all soldered together. So I got the battery with the barrel and the switch and all the wires. Alright, so now here is the lower receiver. You can see you got the trigger and the spring. So now we're just going to put all this together. This spring is actually from a click pin, so they're very easy to get. You just have to destroy a pin to get it. Not that big of a deal. Alright, so here's that notch that's in the trigger right here, and you'll see the spring will fit right in there, that spring from the pin. It's a perfect fit. So we'll just go ahead and leave that there, and we'll get the lower. Alright, so here's the lower, and as you'll see right there is the hole for the spring. Okay, so we'll just plop the spring down in there. And once we get the spring all in here, and then we will have to drop the trigger in. So now we got the spring in the hole there that it rides in, and you can see here where we dropped the trigger down in, you can see the spring there. So we'll just grab the trigger, and there is a top and a bottom to this. So as you can see right here, the top is flat right there, and the bottom has this little groove on it. Right, see that right there? And that is going to ride right here in the bottom of the trigger guard. So we got to make sure we drop that end down first so it can go into that slot to ride in, and to press the spring a little bit, and we're just going to have to try and line these up. So you can see the notch where the spring is supposed to go in the trigger. Right there it is. So now we're just going to bend that spring up there, get that in that notch, and then put the bottom of the trigger in the groove. Okay, and we're just going to mess with it here for a little bit until we get everything all lined up. Okay, so looks like we've almost got it. And obviously this is a little bit more difficult to do when you're trying to keep it in the camera view as well. But there we got the spring in the notch and the trigger resting down in the groove, and you now have it installed. And you can see right in here. So I'm going to tap it down with a punch, make sure it's in the groove all the way. Pull it forward to the end of the groove, and there we go. We have a trigger with the spring that pushes it back forward. And you'll see down in there, there is a little hole right there, and that is where your micro switch is going to go. You want to make sure that the trigger is towards the front and you have that little hole in the back. And I'll show you here when I pull the switch out how I set that up so that when you pull the trigger, that hole gets smaller and you hit the switch. Now you'll see there, if you pull it from the top, you get that big gap. So you want to make sure that you're pulling it from the bottom and that the top stays put, so that only the gap on the right hand side, you can see it moving now. You're pulling it right from the bottom and you're squeezing that gap smaller. And that's what's going to set off your micro switch. So if we pull all that over here, and we now have our wire assembly that we made earlier, and you can kind of see already the curve in the micro switch. Right, so we got our blue LED in there. That lights up perfect. Okay, and you'll see the switch here lights up the light. And you'll also notice here I had to bend the switch right there. You'll see it right there. The little contour I had to put in it, and that's going to drop right down in that hole, and when you pull the trigger, you'll squeeze it. So if you look at how the switch comes, it is just straight. You can kind of see the two of them next to each other. It's just a straight switch. Okay, so you have to take some pliers on this straight edge right here. And it's metal, so you just grab some pliers, is all I did, and bent it until I got the contour that I needed to fit down in that groove for that trigger. I just kept bending it, trying it, bending it, trying it until I got it exactly where I wanted it. Okay, and then let's see here, I should have the bulk pack of blue LEDs like we talked about earlier. With the switches, you got a 2-pack of that, and the battery terminals. Now I'm using a lithium ion. It's 3.7 volt, I believe. Let's see here. So I use these in a bunch of other flashlights I have around, so I just bought the battery holders that used these. And this is, what is a 3000 milliamp 3.7 volt lithium ion rechargeable. And that's, like I said, I use those in other things around the house, so I figured why not just buy the battery holders that hold that, since I have a bunch of them already. Alright, so here is the wire diagram that I got with the blasters from Crossfire 3D. Right, it's just a really basic wire diagram. I kind of used it just as a base model. I didn't really wire it exactly the way they said, because they're using a AA battery with a capacitor, and they have the switch just sitting in there normally with the flat part of the micro switch and it working. So they obviously used a different kind of micro switch than I ordered. So I had to modify it a little bit. Okay, so theirs has the flat. I had to curve mine like we talked about earlier. Alright, so here is my wire diagram that I made up. It took me some trial and error hooking this up to get it to work without smoking, because the wire diagram that came with didn't tell you exactly where all the wires went. So I've got my switch, has these 3 labels on it. The C, the ground, I'm assuming C is constant, and then obviously the ground, and then you have the switch one. So I just played with it until I got it to work when it didn't smoke, and then that is where I put everything. So on the C I have the red from the LED, and then on the CN I have the red from the battery, and then the ground is both on there. So if you see on the switch, I don't know if I can get this to focus that small on it, I probably doubt it, but they're just engraved on there. You can kind of see them right there, just little tiny letters engraved on there, or stamped in there. They're raised, actually, embossed, I guess that would be. And I just fiddled with it until I got it to work. And this battery holder fits perfectly in the upper receiver, and you slide the barrel in and you have it all together. And that's pretty much how it goes. And then you just drop it onto the lower. Okay, so it takes a little bit of time and practice to do this, because you got to drop the switch down in there and get the little curved part that you made to fall in the hole, and then have the switch fall in the actual slot that they made to hold that in, and then you got to tuck all the wires in to get this all to go together. And then as you see right there, the switch just fell out. So we're going to have to fix that. Alright, so you can see if we drop the switch down in the slot there and make sure that the part that we bent falls down into the little hole for the trigger. If we hold it there and pull the trigger, you can see the LED will light up. So we know it works and we know it's bent correctly. The only problem that we're having now really is that the switch doesn't stay in the correct spot that we need it to stay in, because it just floats around in there. So what we're going to have to do is get it to fit a little bit more snug, and we just want a friction fit. So I'm going to use this electrical tape here and stack it up on the sides of the switch, because we still want to be able to remove the switch if we ever need to work on it, if the wires ever come unsoldered, if they break, if anything happens, we don't want the switch to be stuck down in that hole. So I'm just going to cut off some strips of electrical tape here, and we're going to stack it up on the side of the switch and keep fitting it into that hole until we get the stack up right, where it's a snug fit and it stays in there without falling out, but it's still loose enough for us to pull out. So we're playing like a little balancing game here. So we'll cut some strips of electrical tape and we'll start stacking them on here until we get it to the snugness that we're looking for. That way it won't come loose when you're walking around and trooping with them, and you can pull them in and out of your holsters and they'll still work and nothing will rattle loose. but if you ever need to do repairs, you'll be able to take it back apart. That's why we're not gluing it in. Alright, so I'm going to speed this up here for you so you don't have to watch me go all slow, taking this in and out, cutting more tape, getting the fit just right as I keep messing with the tape to get this to fit in here just the way that I wanted it to. Alright, so I got the wires all done the way I wanted, and I got it put in there. And you can see here that it's going to light up when we pull the trigger. So there we go, we got a couple bursts from it. So it is all working, and all I did is take the electrical tape, just like I showed you, cut a couple pieces, stacked on each side of it until I got it to fit. I'd take this popsicle stick here and kind of nudge the wires in as I closed the cap on because the wires wanted to bow out. And then we'll just put this on, which I ended up gluing to the upper receiver, and then we'll put the magazine in. And there is our finished working blaster that when you pull the trigger, you get a blue laser bolt. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with it, and it looks pretty cool. So there it is. Alright, so now we have the magazine. And you put it in here and see it's really loose. Okay, so I think we're going to do the same type of trick with the electrical tape that we did with the switch. And we're just going to put some electrical tape on this magazine until we get a nice good friction fit. I didn't want to glue this in either. You probably can, but I decided since this worked good for the switch that I'm just going to do it on the magazine too, just in case I ever want to take it out. I can. So I'm just going to take some electrical tape and we're just going to do a couple wraps around this to make it a little bit thicker to take up some of that extra space that's in the magazine well and give it a nice tight friction fit. So we'll just keep wrapping a little bit and fitting it until we get it where we want it. I'm just kind of judging here for how thick I see it getting, for how much of a wiggle that I felt. But it actually looks like I'm running out of tape, so I think we're just going to use it all and hope that it works. So that's the end of that. Time to buy a new roll of electrical tape. It does look pretty fat, and we'll slide it back in here, and it's already going a little bit tighter. Use a little bit of force to get it in there, and it stays. Look at that. Nice and solid. Doesn't wiggle. Only comes out if I put excess force on it, then it'll come out. If it's just sitting there, it just stays. And honestly, guys, it's taken me a couple weeks to edit this, and the magazine's been on there just fine for weeks. It's never fallen out, and of course I pick it up and play with it every couple of days and shoot a little laser bolt across the room or something just for fun. Alright, and there it is, everyone, a finished DC-17 blaster. Now I have a second one to build, and I'll just build that one off camera. This whole 5-part series shows you how to build one. Just duplicate it for the second one. Click subscribe, watch some of the other videos. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.